Hey everyone, it's Jason. Welcome to Arkham Horror, the card game. This is a living card game by Fantasy Flight. So I have previously done, which I'll link in the description, a video where I kind of went over a brief what is Arkham Horror and kind of a rough how to play the game. Here we just want to jump into the actual game itself. So this will be a two-part video because I'll do one part where I go through all the Investigator cards, the Investigators themselves, who you're playing as, and their various cards you can get to make up their decks. And then part two will go through all the campaign stuff. We're breaking this up for two reasons. One, easier to just digest and having two separate videos instead of having a really long video, especially core sets tend to be longer than expansions. And then two is because after the last few years they've changed how their releases were and they've been re-releasing all their boxes. So instead of having a core box for each or a big box expansion for each set, and then a bunch of small little Mythos packs, they've started breaking all their boxes up to you have an Investigator box or the campaign box. So you can either buy more story if you like, or you can buy more Investigator card. You can buy as you choose instead of having to buy packs that mix both. So you're just getting little tidbits of each thing. So you're buying a full story or a full collection of cards. With that being said, the core set also has a revision, so kind of keep an eye out if you're looking at picking this up, which version you're buying. What is the main difference between the two? So when Arkham first came out, you bought a core set. It gave you enough cards to basically, you could more or less play with two players. You had enough, because each deck can have 2 copies of each card, so they had enough so you can, with the regular core cards, Investigator cards, so you can technically make up to 5 decks, one for each Investigator, each one dual classing in each color, but then each one would only have 1 copy of each card. So like, if I had a green and a yellow Investigator, each one would have 1 set of green cards, 1 set of yellow cards. So people that wanted to play multiple characters or mixing and matching or some of the same types and stuff like that, or if you want to play certain characters a little bit differently, you ended up basically they wanted you to buy a second deck or a second box. So then the revised set came out now when they started redoing their format, and it now contains, it still has the same number of Investigator cards, so that doesn't fix that problem. But what they did was they added enough of the common cards that every deck uses, so you can actually build all 5 of these decks at the same time. Because before you can only build 2 at the same time. It's only a 4-player game, but they're giving you the ability to build all those decks. So basically, the revised version is more or less a mashup of 2 decks, or 2 boxes together. It also does include a couple of extra cards from the first expansion. The Dunwich Legacy as upgrade cards, has some alt art cards, has a couple of different extra, like, few components and alt art cards. So either you can pick up the new revised edition, or if you can find 2 copies of the old one, you can do that as well. Or if you just pick up 1 copy of the core, and then if you pick up a bunch of expansions, as long as you don't mind having to not have access to the same amount of cards in there, it'll be fine. If I end up picking up a full set of the revised edition, I will do a comparison box at some point. But just being the fact that I already had 2 cores at this point, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me to buy another version for full price if I can find it for cheap. So what is in the box? Before we hop into the cards, we're going to kind of look at what's in the box here. So we have our 5 Investigator cards, our 5 mini cards for them, 110 scenario cards, 119 player cards. We have 30 resource tokens. We have, so where are my resource tokens here? So the resource tokens will be our little brown crates here. They're for keeping track of what you can spend points on. We have our 40 chaos tokens. So we have chaos tokens here that are drawn throughout the game. They have minuses on them. We have some that have, a couple that have pluses. We have some elder signs. We have some doom symbols. And then we have some of our other nasty symbols as well. And I'm not going to go through each and every single one of them. And here you can kind of see a little bit of selection there. We have some horror and damage tokens. So these are brains or hearts for your health, for your damage, and some brains for your mental. Keep track of those, so keep track of your character stays alive or goes insane. We have some Doom tokens here, Clue Doom tokens, which are double-sided. Keep track of both of those. So those are our basic different tokens we're going to get. Plus we have a campaign guide, a learn to playbook, and a rules reference. Set that out of the way quick. So we have a big giant rules reference book. I'm going to back this up just a little bit more. And scoot you out of the way. So our rules reference book, just again, I probably showed this off the other video, just gives you a good idea of what is all in here. Now, this is not the how to play book. This is just going through all the little things you might need to look up, which looks very hefty, but this is just more so like in a place if you need to do it. So if you're worrying about your health or what the word instead means or keywords, certain different things, you can look this up a lot quicker than having to retry and dig back through and find some of it in the rule book. So that's basically what this is. And then it even has like skill test timing, little charts. Now, for revised edition, this probably got updated a bunch, so keep that in mind as well. And then we have our campaign guide, which will show you how to play through the actual story, what to set up for each campaign, stuff to read, like what sets to use, and we'll kind of maybe take. I'm not gonna take a better look at this later. We did it in the other video, but yeah. So this just says what is in the Dunwich plus your chart. Now, I just do want to do a comparison. This is for a newer set. Edge of the Earth, which is this is how they do the campaign books now. So it's the exact same setup and layout, just now it's in a spiral binder. But otherwise, all the rest of that stuff's going to be the same thing. It's going to show you pictures if it needs to. But the big difference is this contains all of the encounters that would have been in the expansion packs. The expansions usually have one big set, which has like one or two different sets, and then it has 6 other small sets and has a couple other like little small encounters. So this would be like the full pack of a box expansion plus 6 Mythos packs, and it's everything in one thing. So this is how they started re-releasing them. In future videos, I will be doing, just as a heads up for those, for the expansion packs. Up until they started doing Edge of the Earth, where they only come in the campaign box, I will be doing a speed video where I just go through what is in each single separate little tiny Mythos pack, which are little like booster packs. Essentially, it's up the same cards in every pack. And then I will do a full unboxing of, like I was doing with the newer ones, which is just the campaign cards and just the Investigator cards. So there'll be 3 different videos that'll come out for each expansion. Just that way you have an idea of what's all coming out. Or what you can get, how you want to get. So if you want to pick up a small pack, so at least have an idea. And we also get a bunch of little dividers as well, too. I forgot to show those off. Alright, let's go ahead and hop into this. So to start off, we have our 5 investigators. We're going to get the little mini cards, which are used to track them on the, quote-unquote game board for the Arkham side. You play down cards and locations, you expand the world that you're in that campaign. These guys will tell you where you're going to move at, and whether they're active or not. So they'll have a light and dark side. To show if you've taken your turn or not, just so you kind of have it as a reminder. I have seen people upgrade some of these to miniatures, or they've used standees to have them standing upright so you can move them around a little bit easier on the board. Inherently, there's nothing wrong with that as long as you're able to keep track of who's taking their turn and stuff like that. That would be the only thing, is because otherwise, if you have something that's standing straight up, it doesn't work that way. Also note, sleeves do not come included in this game. I have provided my own sleeves. Hopefully there won't be a ton of glare. But we're going to look through all the investigators first, and then we will look at their respective different colors. So on our first one, we have our Guardian class, which are in the blue. So the Guardian tend to be like the, if there's a thematic element, they tend to be more like the cops or the authority figures. Not all the time, but that's generally what they are. So we have Roland Banks, the Fed. And we have our 5 stats up there, which I'm going to keep referring to as different things, but we have mental or brain for 3. We have book or knowledge for 3. Fist or fighting for 4, and agility, or foot for 2. And I'll go back and forth on these terms every video. So he has 2 keywords, agency and detective. He has a special ability. It says reaction. After you defeat an enemy, discover 1 clue at your location, limit once per round. An Elder Sign effect, so if he ever draws the Elder Sign token while testing for something, he gets +1 for each clue on your location. Everything by the book, everything I dotted every I, crossed every T. I had all worked until now. He has 9 health and 5 mental, so it's 5 sanity. So yeah, the idea of him is more or less is he wants to be looking around. He's a fag. He's trying to discover what's going on. So he wants to be moving to spots where there are clues and trying to discover clues. He gains bonus if there's a bunch there. And while he's doing it, he's going to try and take out enemies that are in his way. And then he gains extra bonuses for that. He doesn't benefit from just sitting back and sniping things or running blindly necessarily just blindly into taking out enemies, because if he can't get a clue from it, then it doesn't really benefit him as much. So then on the back side, we will have his deck building options. So the core side, of course, they're going to have a little bit easier deck building options. It says deck size of 30. He can have Guardian cards, which have the blue or they have the little star on them, 0 to 5. And just to show off a reminder of what that means. So up at the top of the card, they're going to have these little pips in there. So if they're at pip 0, that means they're level 0. If they can go up to 5 pips, it means they're level 5. And all that really means is that up to level 5 means as you build your deck, you have to spend so much experience to build your deck. So if we grab like a later one, this is a level 4 card. It costs 5 to play, but it's a level 4 card because it has 4 pips. This usually means they're stronger cards, but they cost you more to do. You upgrade your deck to them. He can have Seeker cards, which are in the yellow, for level 1 to 2. So he's mainly going to be playing blue cards, but you can play some lower level Seeker cards. And then neutral cards 0 to 5. Deck building requirements do not count towards deck size, so he has to include these in here. His rolling 38 special, and cover up, and 1 random basic weakness. So pretty much every character is going to have the same thing. For the deck building requirements. They're going to usually have a special item or special card that works towards them. It could be an asset, could be an event, could be an item, possibly. Then they usually have 1 weakness that is their personal weakness, which is his cover up, and then they have a random basic weakness. So in the end, he'll have 33 cards. So let's go ahead and take a look at his special cards. So we're going to have... so the backs of the decks are always going to be the same for either set, good, bad stuff, or anything in your deck's always going to be the same, I should say. So rolling 38 special is a 3-cost asset. I'm not going to always read the numbers on the side. Those are for skill tests. You can clearly see what those are. But we have an item, firearm, and weapon. It uses 1 hand. Rolling Banks deck only. It uses 4 ammo. So you activate this little arrow. Means activate. Spend 1 ammo to use a fight action. You get +1 fist for this attack. If there are 1 or more clues in your location, you get +3 fist instead. This attack does +1 damage. So very nice. So basically, he has his own gun that he can walk around and carry. He can fire up to 4 times. Gives him some extra attacks. And if he's on clue areas, he's really hunting down, getting them enemies when they're sitting on clue areas. He can gain some extra attack for it. Just better dice roll. So there's a better chance of hitting this. Plus, it does an extra damage. Which, hey, 2 damage will help a bunch. Then he has his signature weakness. Cover-up, task. Revelation, put cover-up into play into your threat area of 3 clues on it. Reaction, whenever you would discover 1 or more clues in your location, discard that many clues from cover-up instead. Force, when the game ends, if there are any clues on cover-up, you suffer 1 mental trauma. So this is his personal weakness. What he needs to do is he needs to, basically, to even get his game rolling, he needs to discover at least 3 clues, and then he's starting fresh. So you could go the entire game, it just might not come up, great, you can go ahead and discover some stuff early, but as soon as it comes up, all of a sudden now it's in play and something you have to deal with. Like his past came back to haunt him, he has to get rid of it before he moves on. If he doesn't, he's going to suffer mental trauma. The problem with mental trauma is that is damage would be brain damage that carries over from game to game. So like other regular damage will heal between games, but you get the trauma, it'll stay with him. So he'll have extra damage from game to game. So you definitely want to make sure you get rid of this. But depending on when it shows up late in the game, there might not be a lot of clues, or you have to decide, do we finish the goal? Are we on a time limit? Do we have to finish the goal before he has time to run around and look for 3 more clues? Are there even 3 more clues left? So very interesting. All right, let's look at our second investigator. We have Daisy Walker, the librarian. So she's the yellow seeker. Seekers are usually the knowledgeable characters, the Miskatonian workers, Miskatonic. They work at the Arkham College, somewhere involved professors, things like that. The smart guys. So she has three knowledge, or 3 mental, 5 knowledge, or book, 2 fist, and 2 foot. So she's going to do more knowledge-y stuff than fighting or running. So she says, Miskatonic, you may take an additional action this turn which can only be used on tome activate abilities. So that's kind of nice, getting an extra thing, but you have to have your tomes out. Elder Sign effect, +0, so you didn't get a bonus for getting it, but if you succeed, draw 1 card for each tome you control. More cards in hand give you more options of stuff to do, so it's always a great asset to have. I know of books so powerful they can rewrite reality. So she has the opposite stats of rolling. She has a 5 and a 9. So she's not going to take a lot of physical damage, but she's going to have a lot of mental damage. She can deal with horrible things happening. Alright, so her deck building, they'll all be very, very much the same. So she has 30 deck size, Seeker cards of level 0 to 5, Mystic cards of 0 to 2, and Neutral cards 0 to 5. And then she gets her requirements, her Daisy Topek, the Necronomicon, Gandhi Translation, and her random weakness. So she's going to sub into the Mystic class. So basically, it's her reading books that have extra knowledge of mystical powers, but she's not powerful enough to unleash massive spells or anything like that. Then she gets her tote bag. So she has a 2-cost asset, which is an item. It says Daisy Walker only. You have 2 additional hand slots which can only be used to hold tomes. So this is really good for her. So now she can hold up to potentially 4 tomes. So you can hold 1 in your left hand, 1 in your right hand, throw 2 in her book bag. So she has 4 options for tomes, giving her extra abilities to use. Then she also has her special ability. She can take an additional turn every turn, action every turn, to use one of those tomes. So basically giving her more tomes gets her a lot more extra actions or stuff to do. Options. Her bad one, though, is she just did a bad tome. She has the Necronomicon, the John D. Translation. Item and tome. Revelation. Put the Necronomicon into play in your threat area. 3 horror on it. Cannot leave playable, has 1 or more horror. Treat each Elder Sign you activate on a Chaos token as one of the tentacles. Which is basically just signifying a different bad thing. So Elder Signs are positive, the other ones are bad. Action. Move 1 horror from Necronomicon to Daisy Walker. Then if Necronomicon has no more horror on it, discard it. So hers, in and of itself, you could possibly just ignore this for the fact that it doesn't, unless you draw an Elder Sign, it doesn't do anything to you. It just sits there. If you have some way of healing horror, move some over, you can heal it right back off. Her she also has 9 mental, so you can take 3 damage into bag. The thing that really hurts this is because it takes up a hand slot. So while this is in, that's 1 less other book she can have. Where Roland just kind of sits off on the table, doesn't really get in his way of what he can play. This actually takes up 1 of her slots. So she doesn't have her tote bag out. I mean, she can only have 1 other book out. So you might have to just pay the cost to get rid of this, just so you can play other cards. Alright, our third investigator is Skids O'Toole, the ex-con. So he's green in rogues. Rogue cards are generally your, what do you want to say, like your like mafia, because this is like the 1920s, 1930s era. So they're like your mafia, your gangsters, your undercover cops, I guess. So like your seedy people, your back alley work dealers, your cons, like these are the ex-cons, your criminals. So like almost the opposite of a blue character, a guardian, in that sense of what they are. But the adjacent enough that they're the same thing. Morality opposite, I guess. So he has 2 brains, 3 book, 3 fists, and 4 agility or foot. So he's gonna be able to move more. He has criminal. He has a instinct. So during your turn, you may spend 2 resources. You may take an additional action this turn, limit once per turn. So where Daisy's was free, but she could only use it on books. And Roland kind of got a free ability because he got an investigate ability for free if he defeated something. There are little conditions. His, he just has to spend money or resources to do it. The Elder Sign, he gets +2 if he succeed, gain 2 resources. So if he keeps getting that Elder Sign, which is not going to happen super often, but it'll definitely help him out. He has 8 and 6, so he goes a little bit lower on the health, a little bit higher in the mental, kind of just back to that balance there. A little off balance. His back side of his card, his deck building options is size 30. He has rogue cards 1 through 5, and he has guardians, again, kind of like leans into the, hey, I know how to use firearms and training like a cop. 1 to 2, and then neutral cards. He has deck requirements on the lam and hospital decks and 1 random weakness. So let's take a look at his cards here. So we have on the lam, which is his event, 1 cost event. Tactics, digital only, fast. After you play after your turn begins. So fastest means you can play it pretty much any time. Until the end of your round, non-elite enemies cannot attack you. So the other 2 had things that stuck out and did stuff for him. This just gets him a quick one-time escape ability, which, hey, is not a bad thing at all. So yeah, you just play it, enemies can't attack you, then gives you a chance to run away or get out of the way. I ain't going to the pen a second time. But it's also nice because it has his extra random skills up there. His weakness, though, his signature weakness is hospital debts. I don't remember if that's his mom or his sister. Did it say in the card? His mother. Yeah. Says on the back of his card. So this is a task. It says Revelation. Put hospital debts in your threat area. Automatic instinct. Move 1 resource from your resource pool to hospital debts limit twice per round. And then force, whenever the game ends, if hospital debt has fewer than 6 resources on it, you're 2 fewer experience for this scenario. So his penalty is he can keep spending resources to gain extra stuff. What he wants to do is keep putting more resources on this. So he needs to put at least 6 or higher. At least 6 on here. Which limits what he can do each turn. Because if he doesn't, at the end of the game, he gains 2 fewer experience. So if you're playing like just strictly a straight one-off game and you never plan on picking this up again, or next time you play, you're going to pick a different character, this weakness is completely useless. Because why do you care if you gain experience for the next game unless you're going to carry it over to a new character or something like that. But if you're not playing like through a campaign, then this doesn't do anything. I'd probably just say draw another weakness, basic weakness, to at least replace this. But yeah, otherwise you're playing a campaign. This can be very detrimental. You have to spend 6 of your resources, a lot of extra stuff you can do. His ability lets him take extra actions. If he spends resources, that's less of those you can do. Yeah, if you have less experience, it's less cards you can upgrade. So he's spending all his money instead of being able to upgrade cards, he's going to be wasting it on this. It's only 2 fewer, but especially if it's like your first campaign, having 2 fewer and everyone else gets to buy like 1 or 2 cards and you don't get to buy anything, that kind of sucks, right? And then this can come up the next game, and it can come up the next game. Because there's nothing that gets rid of this. So it's always going to be an issue always coming up. So that's kind of a bummer. Alright, our 4th investigator is Agnes Baker, the waitress. So she's a mystic. Basically anyone that dabbles into sorcery or incantations or this. You have some people that are more flamboyant about it. They're literally saying they're some sort of tribal person or a magician of some sort. Other ones are kind of people that have just been touched or experienced enough effects with the supernatural that it's changed them. So this is more like her story. She's, like, she's living as a waitress right now. So she has 5 mentals. So each class kind of has their own thing. Green tends to be foot, blue tends to be fist, yellow tends to be books, and then purple tends to be knowledge. The other 3 usually are activated for doing skills, searching, fighting, or running. And then mental tends to be fighting against the horror decks. It's better against fighting against the bad side. So she has Sorcerer here. A reaction after 1 or more horrors placed on Agnes Baker, deal 1 damage to an enemy at your location, limits once per phase. So she takes damage, she gets to reflect it back. So she's the only one that doesn't really get an additional action. She sort of does. She takes a hit. She just basically do essentially like a free attack. Elder Sign effect, +1 for each horror on Agnes. So as the game goes on, she takes more damage, she does more stuff, she can keep doing extra damage, takes out bigger guys. I remember another life when a sorcery and conquest. Alright, so her deck building is 30. She has Mystic cards 0 to 5, Survivors, which is the red one, which is 0 to 2. Just basically just people that have generally lived normal lives, they have lived, so we'll look at them in a sec. You kind of see if she can get that. She's a waitress, which is surviving somehow. Deck building requirements do not count towards deck size. She has Heirloom of Hyperborea, Dark Memory, and a random basic weakness. So her signature card is the Heirloom of Hyperborea, the artifact from another life. So 3 cost asset, item and relic, Agnes Baker only. Reaction, after you play a spell card, draw a card. So basically refresh your hand. Having cards in hand is always a great option. The actions on surface change from day to day, shifting and moving whenever I'm not looking. So in this thing, it takes up an artifact slot, so you only have 1 of those. That's alright. This is a good place to stick that, so you get an extra card every time you play a spell. But her downside, she has her weakness of Dark Memory. Spell, place 1 Doom on the current agenda. This effect can cause the current agenda to advance. So this is bad. If the agenda advances too far, you lose the game. Or as it advances, it gets harder and harder activating and stuff. So adding 1 on there is never a good thing. But force, if Dark Memory is in your hand at the end of your turn, reveal it and take 2 horror. No, not again. So basically you have this choice when this gets in her hand is, do you take 2 horror, or do you add Doom? If it's early on in the Doom, or after it's just flipped over and it's added to a new agenda, and needs a lot of Doom left, playing 1 Doom's not so bad. You can deal with it. But you probably don't want to play this and then all of a sudden you trigger the activation of the next agenda, causing more things to happen, or worse, the end of the game. But the downside is you're going to take 2 horror every turn. Can you afford to keep taking 2 horror? Or how long can you do that? So it's kind of that thing. What is nice, you go back to her ability. It says after 1 or more are placed on her, she deal 1 damage to her location. So you can always actually use this a little bit to your advantage too. If you know there's a couple of enemies around you, you can hold this into your hand instead of playing it on your turn, and then you can deal 2 extra damage to them, and maybe use this as like once or twice to maybe get some horror on her, so then her Elder Sign's that much more powerful. But again, you do it too long, she's going to die. Alright, then our last investigators, we have Wendy Adams, the Urchin. So survivors are your regular type people, so someone that's not a cop, not a criminal, generally not someone that's been definitely touched by mysticism or dabbles in it, or someone that's not like a smart guy, study professor type person. It's basically anyone else. The regular people that live in this Arkham world that get roped into having to deal with these other people. Like, they don't have this necessarily super adventurous life, or the scholar thing. They're not doing that. So it's kind of just these extra people who just hang on by, they don't have like these extra skills. Like, they haven't learned magic, or they haven't learned cop stuff, or criminal skills, or knowledge from being in the library. So they kind of live on just streetwise memory, just street smarts type thing. So, alright, so we have, we didn't really look at just one thing to point out. For Agnes, we have 6'8", which is the opposite of Skids. And then we have Wendy, who's 7'7". So we have two characters that are high and low on mental, two that are a little bit more even, and then her right in the middle. So it kind of gives you that breadth of everybody. And then her skills are 4, 3, 1, and 4. So she kind of a little bit here and there. She's not really a fighter. Of course, she looks like she's a little girl, so that makes sense. She has the Drifter keyword. It says reaction. Whenever you reveal a Chaos token, choose and discard one card from your hand. Cancel that Chaos token and return it to the bag. Reveal a new Chaos token. Limit once per test ability. And then Elder Sign effect +0. When you use Amulet as play, you may automatically succeed instead. So, she's got a little bit trickier one to play with. Everyone else was more or less like, pay some cost, do an extra type of action. Hers is, if you want, you can discard a card from your hand, so limit your resources. And it's going to let you retry a test, essentially. If you drew it and you got like a +2 or a +3 or a bad symbol, and you're just like, I can't deal with this, you can at least get rid of a card and try it again. You could end up getting something the same or just as bad or worse. But you could also get something better. You can even draw a 0 or a plus or a -1 or 2, or a Elder Sign, which could give you a bonus as well. So it's kind of a risky reward, so it makes her a little bit more challenging to play because she doesn't have a direct, this ability does this. Let's look at her deck list though. She has 30 Survivor cards, 0 to 5. She has Rogue cards, so being a street urchin, she kind of gets a little bit of that criminal element. Neutral cards, 0 to 5. She has Wendy's Amulet and Abandoned and Alone, and 1 random weakness. So her amulet, which is mentioned out front, if she gets a free Elder Sign, or a free success. So +2 or 2 cost asset, item, and relic. Wendy items deck only. You may play the topmost event in your discard pile as if it were in your hand. So this works really well with her other ability. If she discards a card to redraw a Chaos token, she could discard an event, and then she can still use it as if in her hand. So it basically negates that negative effect. Force, after you play an event, place it at the bottom of your deck instead of your discard pile. So then it just puts it down there so you can't keep using the same one over and over and over. But that's a really fun thing. And then it also has, if she has this out, she succeeds every time she gets an Elder Sign. So it's a really interesting card. And her weaknesses: Abandoned and Alone, Madness, Revelation. Take 2 direct horror and remove all cards in your discard pile from the game. I don't need them. I don't need anyone. So depending on when this hits, this could be very bad. This hits very early on, you only have a couple of cards. Okay, not so bad. This hits late in the game and you just lost half your deck. And you don't have any way of getting back those cards. It's definitely gonna hurt. But she's also the only one that doesn't have a card that basically stays out. The other ones kind of had ones that stay out and you have to deal with. Technically, neither did Agnes. Hers is a spell you could cast, but you kind of had the option to keep it in your hand or not. Hers is just, it comes out and it's boom, it's gonna hit. And then there's nothing you can really do about it. Comes out, you reveal it, you do this, you get rid of it, that's it. You don't have any say in when it happens. Agnes is, you have the option, and the other ones kind of sit on the table, which you have to kind of deal with. You know, how quickly you deal with it just depends on how badly you want to suffer. So it makes her a very interesting character. Cool, so those are our investigators. We're going to go ahead and hop into our investigator cards. Alright, we're going to start with our Guardian cards. So we're going to start with the 45 automatic. So there are 2 copies of every card. So if I'm not going to keep saying that over and over. So these are, I'm going to skip a lot of the costs, and we're just going to get into the effects. So you can see it's a 4 cost. These are all level 1s. I'll let you know when we get to the higher levels, but just so we can kind of get through some of this a little bit quicker. So this is 45 automatic. It is an asset card. It says item, weapon, and firearm. Uses 4 ammo. Action, spend 1 ammo to fight. You get +1 fist for this attack. This attack does +1 damage. I'm not going to always compare up too much to this, but this is compared to Rolling's 38 special. So it says fight, you get +1, But if there's more clues, he gets an extra one. It does +1 damage. So this is basically the same as his weapon, except for the fact that if he has clues, you gain additional damage, or you get an additional fight, so you can do it more often. Or do it not more often, but better. So very, again, base set, I always keep that in mind. Core set, so lots of stuff is going to be staple or items that they're fairly decent. They're not the best items, but they're not necessarily the worst things. Hopefully they don't ever release worse things. But as the game comes out and enemies get harder, rules became more complex, they did make better weapons. But that's one reason it's nice. They make upgraded versions of some of these weapons, so that way you can decide if you want to get those. Our next asset here is physical training. So this is a talent. It says spend 1 resource, you get 1 mental for the skill test, or spend 1 resource to get 1 fight for this skill test. So this is kind of I think each color has 1 card that works like this for the core set. It's just, this is out, what do you need a bonus for? What are you willing to spend your extra resources on to help? If you have to do an extra fight, this will definitely help out. Might make you a little bit stronger, or are you trying to mentally train to prepare to fight the enemy? To also note is that, again, I'm not going to use this too much, but Skids can also use a card like this. You can use Guardians level 0 to 2. So if we look at their 2 stat lines, Rolling has 4, Skids has 3. So this could definitely be for Skids, this could definitely, in the same thing, he has 3 and 2. So this could definitely be helpful for Skids to have, to help boost up the little bit lower stats if you need him to be able to fight or use mental a little bit. Or it just helps Roland do it that much more better. Our next asset is we have Beat Cop, who's an ally and a police. So you just have the little ally slot down here. You can only have up to, I think, only up to 1 ally at a time. You get +1 fist. So this is, again, boost your extra fist in there. Discard Beat Cop to deal 1 damage to an enemy or location. So he might be worth lowering your stats down just for the fact of you get to take giving damage. Also, he has 2 mental and 2 brain, so he can take 2 brain and 2 heart. So he can take 2 damage before he's defeated. So you can always use him to soak up 1 or 2 hits if you need to. Or before he's going to die, discard him to deal extra damage if there's an enemy at your location. So allies are always helpful to have. Our next asset is First Aid. A little bit gruesome there. We have Talent and Science. Uses 3 supplies. First Aid has no supplies, discard it. So unlike your guns, if your gun runs out of ammo, it just sits there until possibly you reload it. It's just going to be stuck in your hand. As far as I know, unless you have a card that says there's no way of getting rid of it. This is basically used up assets. So spend 1 supply, heal 1 damage or horror from an investor at your location. So this would be a good thing. You just hand off to Roland. To start with, he can be running around fighting things, and maybe he can run back, team up with somebody else, heal them up a bit, or keep himself alive. Not a bad thing to do either. We have another weapon here. We have the Machete. Asset for item, weapon, and melee. Activate, fight. You get +1 fist for this attack. If the attack enemy is the only enemy engaged with you, this attack deals +1 damage. So unlike the gun, which has limited resources, it's going to be, so we compare this quick, I really gotta get me a, so spend 1, you get fight, and you get +1 for this attack, but this attack does +1 damage. So this one, it's forced extra damage regardless. This one, you're only going to gain the extra damage if the engaged enemy is the only enemy attacking, does +1 damage. So this is going to give it limited time, because it's only going to be if there's only 1 enemy engaged with you, you can do extra damage, but then every time there's 1 enemy, you always get to do it. Where the gun is going to gain it every time regardless, but you only get to use it 4 times. So it's a trade-off on which one would you rather have. Right? Do you want to always be guaranteed, or do you want to hope you have 4 really good shots? So kind of interesting, how you can do different deciding on what you do. We have another companion or ally here. We have the Guard Dog. 3 cost assets, so a little bit spendy. His reaction: when enemy attack deals damage to guard dog, deal 1 damage to the attacking enemy. Fierce, loyal, and trained canines make for perfect companions. So he's going to take 1 mental, but he can take 3 physical. So still evens out to the beat copping total number. But the thing is, after he takes 2 damage, he'll be doing 2 extra damage back to your opponent. Even on that 3rd one. So by the time he takes that 3rd damage, he'll deal 3 damage back to them before he sacrifices himself. We have our first event. So I already get to some events. So these are kind of like play then go away cards. So we have Evidence. With Insight, fast, play after defeating enemy, discover 1 clue at your location. Just as I suspected. Very simple card, right? You defeat an enemy, you get a clue. It's basically Roland's ability on a card that anyone else can play, but it's a great way if you have to defeat them anyhow, so they're not attacking you or they're in your way, so you can get away. You may as well get a clue for it, right? Then we have Dodge. Fast. Play when an enemy attacks an investigator location. Cancel that attack. What's really nice about this is because it works again with enemies or investors at your location, so you can play this to help out your teammates. So it's always nice to make sure you keep some resources off your turn, you don't spend them every turn. So you have cards like this you could potentially use, help somebody else out, stick as a team instead of necessarily spreading out across the board. So that healing bandage do the same thing. Like if you're sticking with somebody else, you can kind of team up and protect each other. Then we have Dynamite Blast Tactic. Choose either your location or a connecting location. Deal 3 damage to each enemy and each investor at the chosen location. This is great, right? Boom. It costs 5, so it costs a bunch to play. But once you do it, 3 damage will take out most basic enemies. Most non-elite enemies. There's some that won't, some that have 4 or 5 health. This will take out a lot of them. Plus, you can take out multiple. So if you can gather multiple guys together, boom. The only thing you have to watch out for is it's also going to deal damage to Investigator. Luckily, everyone has over 3 health, at least in this set. So you could risk it, throw dynamite in if you have, let's say, Daisy's running for her life, or Chelsea spawned a bunch of monsters. Roland or Skids could throw a Roland could. Skids can't use it. Skids uses it, I guess you can. It's a 0 cost. Either one could throw dynamite into a location, deal 3 damage here, which is not ideal, but then they could turn around and use the med bandage to at least heal 1 of them. Or if she has an ally, that ally could take one point of that damage, or 2 of that damage as well. So there are ways to get around that, but it might be worth it to take out a bunch of enemies, sacrifice some other stuff. But again, the game's all about resource management. Alright, our last level 0 card is Vicious Blow, which is a skill card. So skill cards don't have any cost, so whenever you do a skill test check to do something, you can add this card to add an additional spot to it. That's how you get higher stats. Every card is nice because they do duel for that reason. So if you already have a machete in your hand, and you already have one on the table, you have both of them, you're like, I don't really need both, you can always use one for your skill test. Or you have the dynamite, but there's just no enemies around to use it. You can skill test it, at least get something out of it. So this is practice. If this skill test is successful during an attack, that attack goes +1 damage. This is going to be very helpful if you're doing additional damage. Now you can use it for anything else. If you have some other test that requires the fist, you could use it for that, which is not as useful to do. The Sickening Smack. He struck the abomination over and over until the last it stopped moving. So those are really fun. Then we have upgraded cards, or higher level cards. So all the other cards, when you start the game, they'll basically be forming your starting deck. That's how you start the game out. If you have the revised edition, every deck already comes pre-started. So Roland has his deck pre-built, Skids, Daisy, so on and so forth. And then all these other cards are, then after you play through a game, you can slowly start upgrading and purchasing new cards. Means you have to swap out other cards in your deck because you can still only have your 30 card deck limit. But you might swap out, I want less, especially this core game when you have half your deck is one color, half is the other color. You might swap out your secondary color to pick up some of your primaries. So Roland Might swap out some of his Seeker cards to get some more of these extra Guardian cards, which might theme him a little bit better. And this would be a great one for him. So it's a level 1. So it's an event. It says extra ammunition supply. Place 3 ammo tokens on a firearm asset you controlled by an investigator at your location. I've never met a beast that could outsmart a bullet. So this will give you 3 extra ammos for your guns. And especially could work for his his signature gun or his 45. It's not a bad card to pick up. Also, again, I love the fact when they do stuff like this, like controlled by an investigator. So if like Skids could have this in his deck, and then he's just like, I haven't had to use my gun yet, but Roland ran out of ammo, you could hand it over to Roland. Or if somebody else in one of the other colors eventually gets a gun. So we have a level 2 card, Police Badge. Item, you get +1 brain or mental power. Actions, while an investigator at your location is taking his or her turn, discard Police Badge. The investigator may take 2 additional actions this turn. Awesome. So again, I love this idea of working together as a team. 2 additional actions, so maybe Roland needs to do it because there's a bunch of enemies. You need to be able to attack more often. Maybe you need to throw it to Daisy. She can gain clues quicker. Or, maybe you just need to throw it to somebody else, and maybe they need to be able to react to whatever's on that location. They can do something to interact with that. So very interesting stuff you can do with this. And then we actually have our first level up cards. We have a level 2 Beat Cop. So this is another really fun aspect of the game, is being able to get cards that upgrade from one to the other. So this now costs more. It doesn't cost more. It costs the same. But it says you get +1 fight, and then it has a reaction or fast action ability. Exhaust Beat Cop and deal 1 damage to it. Deal 1 damage to an enemy or location, and he gains 3 and 2. So what this does is, if we just do a quick comparison to this, costs the same amount, but he gains an extra skill. So that's helpful for skill checks. That stays the same. He gains 1 extra health, but now his ability changed. So instead of discarding to deal 1 damage, now you can exhaust him to deal 1 damage to him, and he deals 1 extra damage. So like the dog, every time it took damage, it'll let him do damage to an enemy. This kind of does the same thing, except it takes a little bit longer to do. You have to use him to be able to do it, instead of just getting rid of him. But now you can do this potentially up to 3 times, unless he takes extra damage. So it definitely makes him a great upgrade to spend your 2 experience on. And then the last one we have is it jumps up to a level 4. We have the Shotgun. So this costs 5, but you have to have 4 experience. You may not earn 4 experience in your first game. And then this is also a level 4, so Skids can't use this. He can only use up to level 2 cards. So he could use up through the Beat Cop, but he can't use this one. And this is what also makes the game neat, because then it starts making everyone a little bit differently. So it's not every time you play this character, they can use blue, they're always using the exact same cards. Initially, maybe, but as they evolve or get better, or if you're spending extra things to start the game off quicker, you can definitely make every deck a little bit different. Does cost 2 hands, though, so you can't carry this and just pistols. Item weapon firearm uses 2 ammo. Spend 1 ammo to fight, you get +3 fists for this attack. Instead of the standard damage, this attack deals 1 damage for each point you succeed by, to a minimum of 1, to a maximum of 5. If you fail and would damage another investigator, this attack deals 1 damage for each point you fail by, to a minimum of 1. So this is kind of like a mixture between the guns, the regular pistols you've seen, and kind of like the dynamite blast. You gain a lot of extra chance to do these extra fists. It's a lot higher chance to succeed. The more you succeed, so if you maybe spend something like practice or vicious blows, gains us an extra damage point as well, which might be helpful. But some of the ones that give you multiple extra like fists and stuff, you can succeed even better, up to a potential of 5, so you can go up to 5 damage with this. Great, that'll take out a lot of the elite characters, enemies as well. The big downside, though, is if you screw up and you miss, or you get like an automatic fail by accident, and you're shooting at where another investigator is, you could potentially kill them as well. But this is just why. If you just don't fire towards people, very great. But there might be that time, sometimes you're like, oh, Daisy's being attacked, I need to shoot a thing at her, or she's in my location, we need to take this guy out so we can get away. You might just have to risk that. Alright, so that's what we have for our Guardian class. Now, if we had gotten the revised edition, there would also be a couple other cards that were from the Dunwich, the first expansion. Which then, if you bought that expansion later, you get just some more duplicates of that card. So I don't know which cards there are, so I'm not going to go over that in this video. This is just the basic core stuff. Just so we have an idea. But just gave some extra upgrades so people had some more things to go through. But there's nothing brand new in there. Alright, let's hop into our Seekers. Alright, for our Seeker class, the yellow, we have investigative stuff. So the magnifying glass here, it's an item and a tool, takes up a hand slot, has fast. You get +1 in knowledge or book while investigating. Into the lens of world unseen can reveal things you wish you hadn't. So, unless you're investigating, this doesn't do anything, it just sits there. But while you're investigating, you gain an additional bonus. Kind of like some of the other stuff where it helps out is we have Daisy, who gets 6, which is way more than she probably needs. But rolling it takes him up to 5 or up to 4, so that could definitely help because he wants to sometimes find more clues as well. So that could definitely be helpful for him. Plus, Daisy, like in particular, wants to generally have her hand slots probably open for books or tomes. Rolling, he has a gun. Unless he has a machete in the other hand for some reason, or he has double guns out, he could probably use this in his other hand. But again, he has all these books he could choose from as well. So you have the Old Book of Lore, item and tome. Action, exhaust the Old Book of Lore. Choose an investigator at your location. That investigator searches the top 3 cards of his or her deck for a card, draws it, shuffles your main card into his or her deck. So yeah, really helpful keeping together as a team because then you can use this with other people to help them find cards they need. You need to find, Wendy needs to find her amulet. Or Agnes needs to find a spell, or Roland really needs to find his gun or his extra ammunition, just be able to look this stuff and find things is helpful. Then we have a companion ally here. We have Research Librarian, ally, and Miskatonic. Reaction, after a Research Library enters play, search your deck for a tome asset, add to your hand, shuffle your deck. So this is one of them interesting ones. So he comes into play, he's good as one ability, and then he's just gonna sit there. But finding any tome asset is very helpful. Just get it, and now it's out of your way. And then he has 1 damage he can still. So basically he's gonna come in, do this ability, and then you can just let him take a point of damage later. No big deal. There have been problems at the Ornate Library, as we know, given poor Archimedes' condition and the other unrelated incidents of a few years ago. Now, it's kind of neat with, why did I forget her name? Wendy? Daisy. Daisy Walker, is her weakness, her signature weakness is the Necronomicon, which is a tome, which you generally don't probably want to get, but you could always opt to find this right away and just get it out of your way, right? Get it early on when you could deal with it versus drawing it later and all of a sudden now being stuck not being able to do stuff. Risky move unless you want to waste time healing, and it's generally not the idea, but it is at least an option you can do. We have another ally. We have Dr. Million Christopher, Professor of Etymology. So as an ally, Mr. Cock as well. You get +1 book, so here it helps you get extra bonus. Reaction, after you successfully investigate, gain 1 resource. So hey, you get a clue, plus you get a resource back you can use to spend to buy more books or whatever else you need to. Then he has a little bit of damage, 1 and 2. While I truly play that the nightmare is just a singular abomination, I must admit that I'm exhilarated by the possibility of just about 1 specimen of a new genius. Cool. Then we have the extra resource, or extra bonus card for Seekers. We have Hyper Awareness. So this is a talent. Spend 1 resource to gain 1 book for a skill test, or spend 1 resource to gain 1 agility. So, kind of whatever you need to be. And then since every character in this game has the option of playing dual, you could play both of these potentially out for each class, and it gives you up to 4 different skills to cross over with. So if we go back to Roland's here, if I can find it. Yeah, so like Roland could play both of these, for example, and have a potential of one to any of his four skills. Any of his four skills, and then each dual class would have the option of doing that as well. It does cost a resource, but what is nice though is it's not exhaustive, so you can do this as much as you have resources. So if you, I need 4 book really to make sure I complete this test, or like Daisy probably doesn't need as many book, but maybe she needs more foot to be able to get away. Or if Agnes is playing with this, because she can use yellow as well. No, she can't. She's a seeker. Roland can. But Roland needs extra foot to escape. He only has 2. You can spend a bunch on that. So it's a really fun, little, interesting card use. Now, granted, later, like, having something that's just a permanent bonus, versus having to spend something, like Christopher Milian, or, like, the upgraded cop, always a better idea. Because then you get a bonus for using them, and you're not spending a resource. But this at least gives you some options. We have another tome. We have medical text, item and tome. Action, choose an investigator location, test for 2 book. If you succeed, deal 1 damage to investigator. If you fail, deal 1 damage to investigator. So this is kind of a neat one too. We have medical bandages, which just let you heal instantly. This, you have to test for it, but you can use it as many times as you need to, where the bandage only has 3 uses. So it's that back and forth of which one do you want. Do you want the guaranteed for limited time? Or do you want the option to go as much as you want, but it's a little bit riskier? And the higher your knowledge is, so like Daisy with 5 is going to probably succeed at this almost every time, because she only has to succeed by 2, get 2, but like everybody else has a little bit less, like, you know, like Roland only has 3. So it's going to be a little bit more tricky for him to maybe pull this off all the time. Cool. We have our next one. We have, first event here. We have Mind Over Matter. Fast play only during your turn. It's an insight. Until the end of the round, you may use your book in place of your fist or foot. So this is a fun idea for cards. It's basically letting someone with a high book stat use it for fighting or escaping. So again, this is really great for Daisy, who has 5 instead of 2 and 2. So just gonna let her go ahead and swap that out. It's slightly helpful for Roland if he's using it, because he only has 3 book, but he only has 2 foot. So it would let him basically gain a foot, but it would be pointless for him to use it for his fist, because it would drop it down. Although that being said, if you have this in play and something else in the like Million in play, so you can have extra +2. So now Roland has 5. He might even switch over to using that. So depending on if you're playing like on the core set, you have half and half. He might end up drawing a bunch of his yellow cards, and it might actually make sense to use this in that sense. It's not gonna ever say it's 100% useless, but all right. Then we have working a hunch, insight, fast, planning your turn, discover 1 clue at your location. Free clue, nothing wrong with that. Just it might be that one last clue you need. It might be just one in this last area. You might want to run back and grab that quick. Who knows? And we have barricade, insight, and tactics. Attached to your location. So these are fun. Just other things to do with the cards. Other ways to play them. Card design. 98 enemies cannot move into attached location. Force, when an investigator leaves attached location, discard barricade. So this could be great to play like, hey, there's 3 clues on this area. We need a couple of turns to discover this. We're going to drop this barricade down. Now the enemies can't get onto that location. So we can kind of go ahead and take our time, take a little bit of time from doing that. And they're either going to have to go around, or they're just going to have to sit there and wait till you move. But then you might have, just gotta hope you don't have enemies clogging up on that choke point. And all of a sudden, then you move, all of a sudden now you have 4 enemies like 1 space away from you. But very fun. And then we have our skill card. So each class is going to get a special skill. We have deduction. Practice. If this skill test is successful when investigating a location, discover an additional clue. So the blue one lets you do extra damage. This lets you do additional clues. I knew it's in the symbol before. I must warn the others before it's too late. So cool. Alright, then we have our level cards. We have an upgraded magnifying glass, so it goes up to level 1. So it says, item tool, fast, you get +1 book while investigating. It says, if there are no clues in your location, return magnifying glass to your hand. A lens in unseen can reveal things you wish it hadn't. So, basically the upgrade here is now it costs less to play. Instead of 1, now it's free. And then, if there are no clues, you get it back. So this is really helpful. So like upgrading this, if you like using that, so now if there's nowhere around, you can go ahead and return that to your hand, and you can go ahead and have like a tome or something else out in your hand for the time being. And then hey, if you get close back to it, you can go ahead and play it again if you have the hand space open. So that's a very fun little upgrade. Then we have a new relic, asset. We have the Disc of Akazimna, Protective Amulet. Item and relic. Reaction: when a non-elite enemy spawns your location, discard Disc of Akazimna and discard that enemy. Do they fear it because of what it will do to them, or do they fear it because of what it will do to you? So this can be very helpful protecting your more spongy characters. Guy pops in, boom, you can get rid of them. Even if your Seeker can maybe handle themselves, but maybe you're running around with like your Rogue or your Mystic and they just can't take that particular enemy, you can get rid of them. Well, it's only if they spawn there, so it's not, they can't just show up or walk over to your area. So a little bit more situational, but again, it's a relic, so you can always just throw it on your character or just leave it there until you need it. We have the Encyclopedia. Item and tome. Action exhaust encyclopedia. Choose an investigator at your location. The investigator gets +2 to a skill of your choice until the end of the turn. So team up abilities, right? Very helpful. In the days you can use an extra tome or have extra tomes out. It's supposed to be a comprehensive, but the more I search pages, the more I realize we know nothing about the real truths of the cosmos. So just boosting up someone else's skill for a turn. Again, these are all level 2, so Roland can use all of these. But then we have a level 4. So we have Cryptic Research, Insight, Fast, play only during your turn. Choose an investigator at your location. That investigator draws 3 cards. 3 extra cards gives them a lot more options of stuff to do. Might give them that extra card draw they need. Might let them find some, usually as a resource, like Wendy, for example. She needs the ability to discard stuff to use her ability. Hey, 3 extra cards is your 3 extra discards, right? So she can survive tests a little bit quicker. That's very interesting. And again, I love the fact that it's any investigator location. So again, you do gain these bonuses from your team not separating across the board. So if you're playing a 2-player game, you might have to separate a little bit more. But you're playing 4-player, you might break off into teams of 2. You might all just kind of clump together as a group of 1. You'd be like, hey, you're like 2 spaces away, just hold up a sec, let me jump in or help you. I can give you a bonus to your skills for this upcoming test. Or an enemy or location, you like 1 or 2 spaces away, you can always move to help each other out. Versus one team going left, one team going right. You might just like break off like, hey, here's this core room, we each go one direction. But then we can always meet back together if we decide we need to go that way. So that's very fun. Those are our Seekers. Let's look at our Rogues in green. Rogues are always a fun class. So we have the Switchblade. So 1 cost assets is item, weapon, melee, and illicit. So illicit comes up every once in a while. Just basically there's certain things they won't let you do if it's an illicit card, or certain characters won't use illicit items. So that does come up quite often. So it's just fast. So what's neat about this is you can play it at quick speed. So if you the machete or the pistol, you'd have to have already in play to use it. This you could be like, oh no, an enemy came out. I guess I'll use my hand slot and play this. Action fight, if you succeed by 2 or more, this attack does +1 damage. So, if we compare this to the machete, just as a melee weapon, I can find the machete. So, the machete says you get +1 fight for this attack, and then it can potentially do 1 more damage. Same thing with the pistol. This one doesn't do that. You have to actually succeed by 2 or more to be able to do that extra damage. It doesn't give you any extra bonuses. But the thing is, it also costs less to play. the gun had ammo, so it has limited resources, so then if you use it up, you can't use it anymore. And the machete cost a bunch more. This can just pop out really quick, boom, do it. Plus, green likes to do stuff with succeeding by 2 or more very easily. Plus, the guy works again with like skids here. He gets the Elder Sign, he gets +2, which could help him succeed. And then if he does succeed, he gets extra resources as well, so I could tie in with that. So yeah, he's gonna get some cool effects with trying to do this is by succeeding and getting extra ability. So most of the time it might not always do extra damage, but if you're doing a lot, like he has 4 attack. Not a lot of attacks, he only has 3 attack. Which other person that uses Wendy is the other one that uses it. So Wendy's not very high either. She only has 1, so she's probably not going to succeed very often with that. But sometimes other cards will help offset that, which is what we'll see. So we have Burglary. Talent and elicited. Action. Exhaust burglary. Investigate. If you succeed by discovering clues, instead of discovering clues, gain 3 resources. So this can be very helpful. You can just go ahead and investigate. If you don't need clues, you can get some more resources, which rolling can then spend to do other stuff. But you also use it to buy better cards, do things like that. So basically, green is a lot of the time your money group. We have pickpocketing, talent and illicit. Reaction, after evading an enemy, exhaust pickpocketing to draw a card. So if you do evade, which uses your foot action, which again, Roland has 4, and Wendy also has 4, so the 2 characters and users are going to be able to evade pretty easily, get an extra card, and we've mentioned cards are very helpful. We do get a gun, the 41 Derringer. Item, weapon, firearm, and illicit uses 3 ammo. Spend 1 ammo to fight, you get +2 for this attack. If you succeed by 2 or more, this attack deals 1 damage. So a little less ammo than the blue gun, but you get an extra bonus for using it. But a little bit harder to be able to succeed. The other one, if you succeed, you gain the extra damage, or you always get extra damage. Just when you have to get 2 or more. So they make it a little bit more challenging to get those, but if you can pull them off, great. And if you're playing your deck right, you'll probably be doing that more often than not. We got an ally here. We have Leo DeLuca, the Louisiana Lion. Ally and criminal. You may take an additional action during your turn, but he costs 6. He has 2 and 2 for damage. I was born in Mississippi. Louisiana just sounded better. Yeah, the Mississippi Lion doesn't make sense. Leo DeLuca, the Mississippi marsupial. I don't know. But yeah, an additional action every turn, not bad. Plus with skids, you can always pay extra resources to gain additional action. So you'll be able to do more stuff. You can move across the board. Hey, we have to get to that area across the board. I just said don't separate. This might be the character you want to have separate out. He can maybe potentially use extra actions, use extra moves, get across the board quicker, do stuff like that. Or you can fight a bunch of smaller guys a lot easier. His secondary is the Guardian, so he can again pick up that machete, pick up the gun, stuff like this. And one thing also to remember is just with this game is that that's this set of investigators I'm comparing this to. You buy the next set, the 3rd set, the 4th set, 5th set. Everyone's going to have not only new brand new investigator cards, but new investigators are going to have different deck building options. So you might have a green character that doesn't use blue. They might use yellow. They might use purple. You might have one that only uses green, but then can only pick up certain other cards from another type. So you get a lot more different options with every character, which I think makes the game really interesting. Alright, we have Hard Knocks. We have our boosting ones. So it says spend 1 to get +1 fist, or spend 1 to get +1 foot. So definitely help you in succeeding. Green Guardian showing has a way to get a bunch of extra resources. So go ahead and spend those 2, succeed by 2, right, and then get your resources back, right, and then do different things to get your resources back, or instead of discovering the clues, go ahead and get 3 extra resources and you can spend this to succeed more often. So that'll be a little bit more useful in that deck. Who's the other character that uses green? Was that was Wendy for the Survivor. It's helpful for her as well. So we have Elusive, Tactic Fast. Play only during your turn. Disengage from an enemy engaged with you and move to reveal the location with no enemies. So just get away. So this can also then also work with the whole running across the board to get away from everybody, or to like try and discover something from a distance. It's maybe like a dead end, because then you can get away from an enemy really quickly. We have Backstab, Tactic. Fight. This attack uses foot instead of fist. This attack deals +2 damage. So right here, this is instead of being like a gun or a knife, which you can use repeatedly over and over. It's a one-time thing, but you're guaranteed an additional 2 damage if you succeed. And then you have use your foot. So like for Skid or Wendy, that's 4, which is the equivalent of Roland's fist in the blue category. So he's just as strong as them. Then we have Sneak Attack, Tactic. Deal 2 damage to an exhausted enemy at your location. So you exhaust an enemy by evading them. Evading uses your foot. So then green guys like to use this. Wendy's going to be good at this too. You evade them. It exhausts them. And then now you can do 2 extra damage to them. Now we did have like this. It says disengage from an enemy, but that doesn't really help you because you're moving to a different location, so that one won't help you at all, just as a note there. But we do have like pickpocketing, so after you made an enemy, you get to draw a card, and then now you can turn around and sneak attack them. So draw a card and then deal 2 damage to them, hopefully killing them. And if you haven't, then pull out your switchblade at fast speed and then stab them the extra time. So very interesting stuff there. We have our skill card, Opportunist, Innate. Commit only to a skill test you are performing. So normally you can perform skill tests and help out anybody else. Again, teamwork. This one you can only do by yourself. But so if you succeed by 3 or more, return this Opportunist card to your hand after this test instead of discarding it. So why is this kind of a neat thing? So this has random up here, or any. So most of the other ones, they all have a specific thing. So they're going to either boost your mental, or your agility, or your knowledge, or your horror, your brain, whatever. They're going to boost one of the 4 skills. This one can boost any single one. And then if you succeed by 3 or more, which this class really likes to succeed by extra, now you can get this back to your hand. You can keep using it every single test as long as you keep succeeding by at least 3 or more. So that's really helpful. Alright, then we have our level up cards. We're going to start with a leveled up version of Leo DeLuca. Our favorite Mississippian. So now he is a level 1 card, but he says, still, it costs 5. It says, ally criminal, you may take an additional action during your turn, and he has 2 health and 2 mental. So what is different about him? That is the question. Is he worth picking up? Same ability, take an additional action during your turn, same stats, but now he costs 1 cheaper. So this might be one of the things you might be like, well, is it worth it? Right? Is it worth me spending 1 experience point? I could buy, an upgraded magnifying glass, or, for example, or buy upgraded beat cop or something like that instead of doing this. If you have the extra experience point, making that guy 1 cheaper means you get him out 1 turn earlier. And then now you can take an additional action every 1 turn earlier. So it's definitely worth it for that reason. Yeah, it doesn't seem like as much of a change as some of the other cards where they gain an additional line of text. But that's just how kind of like the little level 1s and stuff level up little by little do. So we have Cat Burglar, another level 1 card, Ally Criminal. You get +1 foot. Action, exhaust Cat Burglar, disengage from each enemy engaged with you and move to a connecting location. This act does not provoke attacks of opportunity. So the enemies don't get to attack you, you just kind of just sneak out. So this is a very powerful ally. So now here would be a thing. If you have 1 experience point to spend, do you spend it on upgrading Luca, or do you buy this character? They both have 2/2. If I look at his stats here. So they both have 2/2, so they're going to soak the same amount, but it's basically, do you want to get +1 to your foot, and have the potential ability to occasionally disengage and move to somewhere else, or do you want the extra action? So that's definitely one thing to compare back and forth, depending on what I do. The other thing to keep in mind, though, is if you already have Luca in your, or Leo de Luca in your deck, you're just exchanging him for the same one. You have the same number of cards. If you want Cat Burglar, you have to get rid of something to add him in there. You're not adding more cards to your deck. You have to stay at the same amount. So then it's, do you want to keep him and Luca, or do you want to get rid of something else? Maybe you don't need the extra, opportunist, or you want to swap out your sneak attack or your backstab or something to have this guy instead. Maybe you're evading cards. So it's kind of an interesting way how you guys decide what you want to do there. And as more and more cards come out, this decision gets harder and harder. We have another level 3. So now this is interesting because he goes right to level 3. So now this means Wendy can't use his cards. We have Sure Gamble, Fortune, and Insight. Fast. After you reveal a Chaos token with a negative modifier, switch that token's minus to a plus. So this could definitely help you succeed. You draw a -2, now you have a +2 instead. You're probably going to succeed with this. It's all this is really meant for. It's definitely worth 3 points to get. And then the last card we have is a level 4. We have Hot Streak, which is a fortune. Gain 10 resources. I win again. Sorry, Sugar. It's just not your night. 10 resources for a 3 cost. It's going to cost you 4 experience. Again, you might not be able to afford it the first game. Maybe not even the second game, depending on how well you do. But yeah, 10 resources. Now, you want to note something on this. So there is a taboo list that they have made, which is basically where they come out every so often and they adjust cards. You could, some of them are kind of like banned or restricted lists type things where they might be like, you can only play one of these, or maybe this card's not allowed to be played anymore. They don't do that as often, but what they do with the taboo list, which is optional to play as, you do not have to use it. Just keep in mind though, if you ever go to like a board game, board game event or something, pay attention whether they have the taboo list in play or not, or if they're using it, because if they are, it's going to affect how your deck and your cards work. Because basically there are functional changes to the cards. Some of them could add extra cost to cards, some could add extra levels, so they could make this a level 5 card, they could actually make this up to a level 10 card. They have ways to like make cards even more expensive so they're harder to play. It could change some of the text on the card. Like say instead of 10 resources, maybe they drop to 5. I don't remember the exact text on this one. But then every time they release a taboo, which is about once a year, I think about every year, maybe every other year, when they update it every year, I think, cards could change. Some could go up, some could go back, and like new sets came out, making this other card not as bad as it was before. So it's just their way of like Fantasy Flight games of like fluctuating how powerful cards are without having to, again, literally do like a Magic the Gathering or Yu-Gi-Oh or Pokemon or any of that stuff, of basically being like, ban, this card is no longer allowed to be played anymore. And you're like, oh, but I like, no, they just change how it works. Sometimes they make it more expensive, sometimes they do it. Sometimes they take weaker cards though too, and they make them more powerful, which is something most of these other games don't do. They take powerful cards and they get rid of them. If you have weak cards, they're like, screw it, play a different card. Taboo lists will sometimes create bigger cards. And I might do a look over one of those at some time. But since they change constantly, I don't know if I want to do it too often. But I know this is one of the cards I think got hit with it at one point. I don't know if it still is at this point, but I think it's because 10 resources is a lot. But definitely cool. Alright, we got 2 more classes, plus we have a bunch of uncommon cards. Generic cards go with neutral. So we'll hop right into those. Alright, let's dive into the Mystic with our Mystic class. Forbidden Knowledge, a talent, uses 4 secrets. So secrets are going to be just like clues or supplies, anything else, or ammo. They're just resources that get put on here to be used up. If Forbidden Knowledge has no secrets, discard it. So it's nice it doesn't sit around and do absolutely nothing on the table. Exhaust Forbidden Knowledge and take 1 horror. Move 1 secret from Forbidden Knowledge to your resource pool as a resource. So what this does is you play it for free, and basically it gets you 4 resources you can use more or less whenever you need them. You're just always going to have access to it. You're just like, oh, I have 3, but I need 4 to play this specific card. Boom, you can do this to get 1. You have to take a horror damage for it. but it's not too bad. Our two characters that can use this in the base set here are Agnes and Daisy, who have 8 and 9 respectively, so they can afford to take 1 or 2 damage. It's not going to hurt them too much. And the thing is, you don't have to use it. So you can go ahead and play this. Turn 1 sits around if you don't really need anything extra for whatever time. It just sits there and doesn't do anything. So it's not too bad. But you only use it 1 at a time because you have to exhaust it. So it's not like you can exhaust it and take 4 damage unless you gain 4 extra things. We have Holy Rosary, an item and a charm. You get +1 brain or mental. Again, the mental stat tends to be more for dealing with the horror deck, the enemies. Where again, your foot is agility for usually moving around, maybe like quick weapons like the road stuff. Your fist is usually your guardian stuff, which has to do with fighting, physical attacks, weapons. Your book, which is your knowledge, has to do with clues, and your seeker class. This is usually the mental stuff. We're dealing with the horror and that. And there's stuff, some of the other cards to check. We'll see in the next card. We have some cards that do that. Whether focused through the mundane trinket or a mystical artifact, there's real power and faith all the same. So this also gives you an additional 2 brain to soak up, which with that last card, hey look, now I can take 2 additional times. This can get discarded, no big deal, if you need to. Alright, we have a spell. So technically our second spell, because our 1 weakness was a spell, but our first player spell. We have Shriveling. Uses 4 charges. So this is an arcane slot. You have up to 2 arcane slots to use at a time. So you can, kind of like books, you can only have so many out and ready to go. We have action, spend 1 charge. Fight. This attack uses your brain instead of your fist. Deals +1 damage. So this is why brain matters for that. So again, Agnes has 5. She's really going to be able to make note of this. Where Daisy only has 3. So this isn't going to help her as much. But her fist is also only 2. So and plus, if she's using this in Mystic, she doesn't have any weapons in her Seeker class, so this might be the only way she has a way to do any type of damage. So as if the skull, the hood, the window, the heart, or the tentacle symbols are revealed during this attack, take 1 horror. So this is the whole thing with the Mystic stuff, right? Is they usually have a little bit interesting or cheaper costs sometimes, or they do a little bit more powerful abilities and some of the other things, but if you draw these bad symbols, they tend to hurt you. So it's kind of a yin-yang thing. They already do bad things anyhow, but they just do extra damage. So we have another spell. We have the Scrying spell. So these are 3 charges. You draw Scrying, spend 1 charge, which are the top 3 cards of any investigator's deck or the encounter deck. Return to the top of the deck in any order. So you need to restack anyone's deck is super helpful. Lets them kind of, you know, hey, I'm gonna look at Roland's deck. You need, what do you need? Do you kind of need your guns? You need, like, and now here's the thing with a game like this is you can play either full information, no information, or semi-information, I guess. You can go in the middle. Either full information is literally actually the top 3 cards of this deck. I can weigh them out or show them what card do you need. Here's this, here's that, here's that. That's full knowledge, doesn't matter. You're just trying to play cooperative, have fun, get stuff done. Semi-knowledge, I would say, would be if you're on the same location as that character. You could be like, I'm standing right here, I can talk to you, I can share information I have because we're right here. I'm like reading your, you know, like that. But if I'm across the table, I'm across the location somewhere else, I can't shout information to you from like if I'm on the Agricultural house and you're in the basement, I can't shout what's happening. Or if I'm in the library in the town and you're across town at the old barn, I can't shout information to you. So there's kind of limited information there. To make the game different. Or there's no information where just, in general, you can't share information. You could kind of combine that with limited. And also maybe be like, you can give limited information, but you can't directly say, you have this card, this card, this card. You could be like, oh, hey, Roland, I'm trying to look into your destiny. What's something that you think you would need? And he's like, well, I could really use an ally, or I really need, like, I'm really hoping for like a weapon. You could kind of give that limited thing, and then if you say weapon, you'd be like, so he has the gun and the machete available to him. Which one do I give him, right? Or if he's like, I could really use something to help me get clues. Do you draw as give them the Investigate card up on the top, or do you give them a Tome? And you gotta hope that that's the right thing to play for. So without directly saying do this, do that. And again, however you play it, there's nothing wrong with it. It can be fun. I just always say again, maybe check with people if you're playing new groups of people, or playing at like a board or like a convention or a table or a gaming store or something. Check to see what people's thoughts are and stuff like that, because some people might get irritated if you just start literally saying, hey, I got these 3 cards, what do you want? So yeah, cool though. That's a great card to have. Alright, then we have the Arcane Studies. Talents, this is our resource one. So +1, spend your resource for +1 brain, or spend a resource for +1 book. So definitely helps succeed at different stuff there. The Arcane Initiate. Sorcerer Ally. Force, after Arcane Initiate enters play, place 1 Demonic. Exhaust Arcane Initiate. Search the top 3 cards of your deck for a spell card, draw it, and shuffle your deck. So this is really great for the Mystics to be able to find their spells a little bit quicker. She also take damage. The downside is that extra Doom, because again, this works just like Agnes's weakness. You just have to decide when that Doom is worth playing. If you play her, I want to be able to find my extra card to search my deck. Great, but if you play this and it advances the agenda, everything gets worse for everybody else. Was that overall worth you being able to shuffle your deck for a spell? And that's kind of your back and forth on that. So you gotta just debate when it's worth playing. Again, once she dies though, then that Doom goes away. So that could also be something you play early on, do it, and then just make sure she gets killed before you take enough damage to have her sacrificed before the agenda, and it drops that Doom back down one, which should definitely help out too. Alright, another event here. We have our first event. Drawn to the Flame. Insight. Draw the top card of the encounter deck, then discover 2 clues at your location. So 2 extra clues, very helpful. Might be the difference between winning the game, losing the game, having to backtrack for stuff. But you also get 2 encounters, so you're also drawing 2 bad things to get it. So there's a cost to it. Just magic has a cost. We live in a placid island of ignorance in the midst of the black sea of infinity. It was not meant for that we should voyage far. H.P. Lovecraft, The Call of Cthulhu. Alright, then we have, to help us a little bit, we have the Ward of Protection, a spirit spell. Fast, play when you draw a non-weakness treachery card. So anytime you draw a card, they can be enemies, they can be treacheries. I think there's a third thing too. I don't remember. Cancel that card's revelation effect, then take 1 horror. So if it comes out and it says, this card does this thing, you can stop it. Let me grab one quick and take a look at it. Of course, I grabbed, the one stack of cards that didn't have a revelation card in there. So, it would be if we flip over this treachery card, Udora's Wrath, it says Revelation test for 5 brain. You'd be like, oh, I can't afford to test for 5 brain at this point. So, you could go ahead and play this to reveal that and then take a horror. Which is nice, so you don't have to redraw a new card. Second level, you can even combine it with our previous one we just saw. Draw a top card of the encounter deck, and then if it happens to be a non-weakness treachery card that you can't deal with, you could go ahead and cancel it and take a horror. So that basically means you got 2 clues for the cost of 1 horror, and you got rid of a card that's going to come up that you don't want to deal with. So very cool combination. Blinding Light spell, Evade. So evasion attempt uses your brain instead of your foot. If you succeed, deal 1 damage to the enemy if evaded. If you draw one of the 5 bad things, is revealed during this evasion, lose 1 action. So yeah, kind of risk reward there. So you can evade and deal damage to an opponent using your brain. So it's definitely a little bit easier to do with certain characters, but you could potentially lose an action for it. And then we have our skill cards. So we have Fearless, Innate. The skill test is successful, heal 1 horror. So this should just help you pass skill tests against your the horror deck, and hopefully heal your horror back, and we saw that one. Hey, draw 2 cards, get a draw a top card of the encounter deck, right? Then, oh, go ahead and spend that card to cancel it, and then take 1 horror, and then you can use in a later skill test to heal that horror. Or you could throw that 1 damage onto your Arcane Initiate and horror and start to try and kill her to get that back. So some interesting stuff you can do with that. Now we have our level cards. So we have a level 1 Mind Wipe. It's a spell. Fast. Play after the phase begins. Choosing a non-elite enemy at your location. Treat the chosen enemy's printed text box as if it were blank except for traits until the end of the phase. So this is also a fun thing to do because basically you're turning enemies into nothing. So like if we drew a Swarm of Rats which has Hunter, not a big deal, but it can shut off that Hunter ability. Probably not that one, but it has to be a non-elite creature, which is the key kicker there. I was trying to see if we had another one. So we did have, that's a spawn card. So that doesn't help either. It's a spawn card. Like this guy here. So this guy's an elite, so it wouldn't work on him. Otherwise, that'd be great. And then these other guys I have, they have spawning abilities, so it doesn't help them because they'll already be in play. But yeah, I can show some of them. Some of them have something like take 1 damage if you're in the same location, or this guy, like Hunter or whatever, it follows them around and might shut it off. Now, it only does it for the end of the phase. It doesn't attach it to them. So that's kind of the one downside to it. We do have an upgraded card, so each set's always got at least 1 upgrade so far. We have Blinding Spell. So now it's a level 2 spell, costs 1. Evade uses the brain instead of foot. If you succeed, deal 2 damage to the enemy. You draw one of the bad things, reveal to a section, lose 1 action, and take 1 horror. So, how is it upgrade? 1 cheaper. Nice, you get to play it quicker. Does 2 damage instead of 1, so does extra damage. But, originally you only lost 1 action. This time you also take 1 horror if you get that. But again, that's if you get one of those symbols. And depending on how difficulty of the game you're playing, you may have more or less of those symbols in there, so it's easier or harder to draw those. But yeah, extra damage for cheaper, never a bad thing. Level 3, so again, this is kind of like the rogue class jump traps. This means Wendy can't use these cards. She can only use up to level 2s. But we have the Book of Shadows. Item and Tome. You have 1 additional Arcane slot. So this is great. So you put a Tome on there. Now she can use an additional... I said Wendy. Sorry. Daisy. Daisy can't use this. Which should be great because she likes having extra books and stuff out. But she can't use this one. Exhaust the Book of Shadows, add 1 charge to a spell as you control. So great. So now you can have an extra spell out, and you can spend this to keep adding charges back to it once every turn, so you can keep using them repeatedly, which is very helpful. And our final mystic is the Grotesque Statue, which is a level 4. Uses 4 charges. If Grotesque Statue has no charges, discard it. As an item in a relic, takes up a hand slot. Reaction. When you reveal a Chaos token, spend 1 charge. Reveal 2 Chaos tokens instead of 1. Choose one of those tokens to resolve and ignore the other. So what this lets you do is basically you draw a thing out and you get a +2 and a -2. You get +2, right? Granted, you're going to keep the +2. Why wouldn't you? Let's say you draw a -2. You now reveal this instead. When you would reveal it, you can reveal it instead of potentially just drawing a -2. Let's say you draw a +2 and a -2. You can choose which one to keep. It also work really well for lots of her spells you saw, where if you draw one of those 5 bad symbols, besides that activating whatever that's going to potentially activate, you can instead be like, oh, I'm going to draw 2 tokens. I got one that's the skull, and I got one that's a 0. I'm going to take the 0. You might even say instead of the skull, you're going to take a -2, if that's your other option. Less on your stats, but then you're not also getting hit with that bad part of whatever was attached to your spell, right? Oh, my spell failed because it didn't get it. Alright, at least it failed, and I didn't, I also didn't lose an action and take a point of damage, or whatever. So that's kind of a neat idea. Then you can always use your previous book here to keep putting charges on there. Except it's a relic, not a spell. Darn. That would have been great. Cool. So that's our Mystic class. Alright, then we have one final class. We have our Survivors in red. So these are kind of like, again, your normal everyday people that just kind of got mixed into this crazy world a little bit more. Not to say that these other people didn't just get drawn into this by accident. They didn't maybe necessarily go searching it out. But they were already kind of dabbling in it. The cops are kind of looking into crimes. They've kind of, oh, this guy got murdered, or this thing happened at this house, this fire, let me go check it out. Seekers are always looking for knowledge. They, oh, I found this text that does this. I'm learning about these things. Mystics are already dabbling with the supernatural. Criminals are probably maybe seeing the seedy underbelly of the world, so they maybe come across this. Survivors are just the other people that were out doing stuff and accidentally kind of fell into this. So they're kind of more of like a random grouping of characters. But they have some really cool effects. So this will, of course, be our Wendy. Who is our other character that can use survivor cards is Agnes, who is our mystic. We just looked at, so she can also use a couple of these as well. So we have leather coat to start with. Item armor. Very simple. Takes up a body slot, which is our first card in the entire game that has a body slot, but gives you 2 extra health. Extra health is definitely not a bad thing to have. The coat was not the most fashionable choice, but it did feel warm and reassuring in its bulk. Then we have Scavenging. Talent. Reaction. After you successfully investigate by 2 or more, exhaust Scavenging. Choose an item, card in your discard pile, and add it to your hand. So this is nice. If you have an item that you've used up, it's going to give you the chance to get that item card back. Another like Wendy's ability, as a reminder, it's been a little while. After you reveal a chaos token from your hand, you can catch that chaos token, reveal another one. By discarding a card. So this will let you discard a card that help activate that ability. And then now you can go ahead and pick that card back up. So now we had one card, her amulet, or use events that way from the deck, just to let you get your item cards back. So it's not seeming as much of a waste. But you do need to succeed by 2 or more. So kind of like the rogues, they like to have extra successes. Speaking of items you may want to pick up, the baseball bat. Double-handed weapon. Item, melee, weapon. Exhaust to fight. Get +2 fists for this attack, and attack deals +1 damage. If the skull or tentacle symbol is revealed during this attack, discard baseball bat after the attack resolves. It's kind of like a broke, is the idea of it. But yeah, so Wendy starts with only 1 fist herself. Agnes only has 2. So yeah, they're not going to really have... So they're going to be a little bit harder to win with some of these, but getting extra +2 and +1 damage is really nice, because it has that little drawback. You might end up destroying this. But of course, with Wendy's ability, if you draw one of them tokens, you can go ahead and discard it and draw another one. And the chances are you're going to draw the other one are very slim. You might not draw a success, but you might not draw that same card. Alright, then we have Rabbit Split. Item Charm. Takes up an accessory slot. Reaction. After you fail a skill test, exhaust Rabbit Split to draw a card. So this is kind of a Survivor's thing. They don't mind getting rid of items. They'll toss stuff aside to gain bonuses here and there. We just saw that a couple of cards. But they also have some stuff where if they lose, they try and turn it to their advantage. They're not trained police officers. They're not, seasoned criminals. They're not studied up librarians. They're not, former sorcerers. This is a little girl that's running, like Wendy's, a little girl that's running around in the alleyways, right? So here's a thing that she can help. Like, she's probably gonna fail tests, but if she does, she can at least gain bonus. You succeed, awesome. I succeeded a test, great. That's what you needed to do. If you fail, here's a bonus to help you back up. They can survive, basically. They claim to bring me good luck. I wouldn't say it's true, but now I feel like it would be even worse luck to get rid of it. And plus, it just sits on there, and you just exhaust it, so you don't have to, like, spend it up or anything. For their ally, we have a Stray Cat. Ally creature. Discard Stray Cat, automatically evading enemy at your location. +1 damage. He never came if you called for him. Always seemed like he had his own agenda. So, the best card ever? Could be. You need to get away from somebody. or you could take a point of damage if you have to. But automatically be able to get away from an enemy might just save your life. Our bonus one is we have Dig Deep. So it's a regular person that's being attacked by this horrible monster trying to just grab a hammer. So they're going to hope for a spending a resource to gain a bonus in mental, or spending one to gain one in agility. And for both of these two characters, they already have pretty decent stats for them. So 4 and 3 or 4 and 4. So like, really, do they need a bonus in this? Not necessarily. But again, you have stuff that if they succeed by extra, that'll definitely help them out. Then we have an event. We have Cunning Distraction. Throw a turkey at these bad flying monkeys. Tactic. Evade. Automatically evade all enemies at location. That should buy us some time. So this just, again, lets you get away from everybody. But it does cost 5. So it costs a bunch, but it's a great way to go ahead and get away from everyone. Alright, then we have Look What I Found. Fortune. Fast. Play after you fail in a skill test by 2 or less while investigating. Discover 2 clues at your location. So, if you fail, and again, failing doesn't always mean you're taking damage. This could mean you're searching for clues, right? Or you're trying to pass something at a location. Do we have a location that has an effect here? Quick. Well, that's a resign effect. That's not really the one we want to fail at. But yeah, it could be something like this. It's not always fighting or playing against, it's not always going to be bad. Like, it could even be an attachment you have from the horror deck that says, hey, if you want to get rid of this thing, like, this thing gives you 1 less action every turn. You want to get rid of it, take the skill test. Yes, if you don't pass it, that sucks. But at least it's not actively hurting you, like, directly not doing damage or killing you. But this just gives you an option of something to do if you do fail those. Then we have Lucky. This is a super powerful card which has been nerfed before. Lucky says Fortune. Fast. Play when you fail a skill test. Get +2 to your skill value for that test. So if you already know you're going to fail, also now you can boost it up. So this means this could be 1, could put you back into the positive. You failed at 0 or you failed by 1, could put you back up into the positive. Or, let's say you failed by 4, now you can do this to go back up to 2, and then now at least, hey, I only failed by 2 or less. So it's a neat way that can work, even like if you're already terribly failing, it can still help you out. And then we have our skill card, Survival Instinct, Innate. This skill test is successful during an evasion attempt. The evading investigator may immediately disengage from each other enemy engaged with him or her and may move to a connected location. So I've used this to get away from everybody. And instead of just getting away from one guy, you get away from everybody and you move. Awesome. Our level cards are, we have a new ally here. We have Aniqua, the Forgotten Daughter. So she costs 5, but she's a little expensive. First is our cat that costs 1. So 1 for damage. Says reaction. When an enemy attacks you, exhaust Aniqua and deal 1 horror to her. Deal that enemy's damage to another enemy at your location instead. You still take horror dealt by the attack. Do not be frightened by what you see. Be frightened by what you cannot. So she can do this up to 4 times. And you deal that enemy's damage. So if they're doing damage to you, you're gonna push that damage to somewhere else. But if they have horror, you're still gonna take horror. If they do both, then you'll just redirect the damage, but you'll take the horror damage. So unfortunately, that's the bad one there. So she could deal this, but then she could also, like, instead of getting to use it 4 times, she might have to absorb some of that damage too. But it's still nice though. An enemy hits you, you can take out a second enemy with her. It's pretty fun. We have Close Call. Fortune, fast. After a non-weakness, non-elite enemy at your location is evaded, shuffle the enemy into the encounter deck. So we have a couple of cards we saw that let you evade. This just then lets you get rid of that guy, at least temporarily. They'll probably come back at some point, but getting them out of your hair for now is nice. Plus, then when they do come back, they'll potentially, they might spawn in a certain spot, or they might go after somebody else because they might have a different ability. Who knows? The only downside of these is they have a come into play ability, but, you know. Then we do have an upgrade. We have Lucky. So this is now a level 2 Lucky. So it says Fortune, fast. Play when you fail a skill test, you get +2 to your skill value for that test and draw a card. So all it does is it costs 2 experience to let you draw a card. Is that worth it? If you're playing Lucky a bunch anyhow, why not gain the bonus for it, right? And it's always like anything I said. You have the experience to either upgrade this card, takes the same place, or you have to get rid of something else to put something else in your deck. So if you're going to keep it Lucky on there anyhow and you have some extra experience, there's not like a level 4 or 5 card you're waiting to buy, why not do this? And at least every time if you find you're using it a couple of times during the campaign or during a match or a game, get an extra card for doing it. Then finally we have 3 costs, so this means Agnes won't be able to use this. We have the Will to Survive. Fast. Play only during your turn. Till the end of your turn, do not reveal chaos tokens for any skill tests you perform. So this means you're just doing it based on whatever you currently have written on your cards. So hopefully you have enough to actually pass, but you're not drawing it. So you won't get any positives, but you also won't get any negatives. So that could be very helpful depending on when you use it. Now I'm also going to notice that Roland had some cards for Guardian. They'll let you kind of help out other players. Books kind of did that too. Agnes did, Purple did that, Mystic. Green did that a little bit, not as much. Red has no cards that let you help out another person. You're kind of all on your own. So it's kind of a thing to keep in mind. Is not saying the red player should be like, oh, I have no cards to help out other players, I shouldn't help anybody. Because again, Wendy's deck also lets her use rogue cards as well. So she might have less in herself being able to really interact with help other people, but she could be picking up some of the scraps and doing some of the other stuff while the other characters are doing their stuff. Cool. So let's hop into our neutral cards. Alright, so now we're on to our neutral cards. These cards can be added into any deck. They still have levels, so just also keep in mind, so on the back of the card says neutral level 0 to 5. There might be some characters occasionally that might not be able to use up to level 5 cards. They typically can, because they're meant for anybody. Now, this is the one of the things where the revised core edition is different than the original version. So in here these are the playset cards. So you get the same number of regular player, Mystic, Guardian, Seeker cards. You get basically 2 of every card. Because when you're playing a deck, you can only include 2 of each copy. So that's why they did it like that. So basically, if you're making all your decks out in your starter decks, you have one copy of each color card in like each deck. So if you're playing the red, yellow, you have, or like red, purple, you have 1 set of red, 1 set of purple, and then whoever has the other 1 card of each have the purple. So when you're starting off, your starter decks have half and half of each. And then you can kind of, if you're only playing like with 2 players, you could definitely slow that down and make some different decks. But the problem was what they did there is there's only enough cards to only play with neutral cards for 2 players. You could reshuffle the decks around and make all the other ones for all 4. So the revised edition, they added more copies of the neutral cards. So you could build all 4 decks. Technically, you could build all 5 decks at the same time, which is how they have it set up. So then that way you could just pick up and play as any character without having to keep reshuffling and re-changing decks. So in here we have 4 copies of Knives. In the revised edition, we have 10 copies. So that's 2 for each of the decks. And then the other next card we have is some of these other cards. We have Firefight, Flashlight, and Emergency Cascade. So like the next couple of cards, instead of having 4 copies, we have 8. They gave us twice as many, so you could have more copies in each deck. So 2 copies in each of 4 different decks. Sorry, we had 10 copies of each of them, so you have 2 in each deck. So these are basic knives. So again, not every single class has weapons or has cheap weapons. So we get a knife, 1 cost asset, item, weapon, melee, uses 1 hand. It says activate the fight, you get +1 for this attack. So unlike the machete or maybe the switchblade, which do extra damage, this just gets you a bonus. Doesn't do anything. But it is still nice to always have in case you don't have any other weapons. It says activate to discard the knife to fight, you get +2 for this attack, and it goes +1 damage. So basically you can spend the knife to get some extra damage. So this might be helpful early on. You draw a knife early, go ahead and have it. At least you have something to help boost up your attacks. But then let's say you draw one of your better cards, you draw the baseball bat or the machete or one of the guns. You could then go ahead and spend this to do the extra damage and just get rid of it to get your hand slot back. Then we have 4 copies of Flashlight, which revised it up to 10, so you can have 2 in each deck. So this is basically the knife is to help with fighting. This is to help with investigating for clues. So item tool uses 3 supplies. Spend 1 supply to investigate your location. Gets -2 shroud for this investigation. So the shroud is what you're comparing your clue giving to. So if we grab a location here, so like this has a shroud of 2 in the study. So that means you'd have to fight against 2 to be able to do that. Like we have another one here that's a 4. So that's what you're competing against to try and see if you can find clues using your book or your book skill. So this just makes that a little bit easier to be able to beat those. You're searching around with your flashlight. Definitely makes sense. Then the third basic card we're going to get is Emergency Cache. Or Cache. So this again has 10 copies, so you have enough for 2 in each deck. 0 cost, gives you 3 resources. It's a very helpful card. Just, hey, I can play this for my turn. I get 3 resources. As opposed to using a regular action to just gain 1 resource, you're basically essentially spending a card to gain an additional resource. So one way people like to look at this, and this is talking about Arkham stuff, you can go playing board games, which is a really great site. They talk about lots of Arkham stuff. As they talk about having your, I forgot exactly what phrase they use now off the top of my head, but you have so many things you can do during your turn, and everything you have counts towards it. So you have so many actions, you have so many resource tokens, you have so many cards in your hand. Everything basically costs to do things. It's how much the economy, it's how much economy it costs to do things. So if I'm spending 1 action to draw a resource, that's one economy I've spent. For this one, I'm spending a card and an action. I'm using an action to play the card, and I'm spending the card to gain 3 resources. So I'm spending 2 economy to gain 3 resources versus 1 economy to gain 1. So yeah, it's a better value overall. As opposed to, like, I could spend 3 actions to gain 3 resources. Great, but now I have no actions left to do anything else. This, on the other hand, yes, it cost me only 1 action. It cost me 2 economy, but one of them was a card in my hand. So it's just kind of neat ideas like that. It's the same idea of some of these other things, like being able to search or a fight. Is basically you can use your regular abilities, but using a card as well as on top of it boosts up your chances. So very neat. Alright, then we have our skill cards. We had skill cards in each color, which again were just extra symbols to help out boosting up things. So we're going to have a skill card for a bunch of the different skills. Now, there's only 2 copies in here for each one. But if you're get the revised edition, they add you up to 4 copies. So, because what they did was they put 1 copy in each of the 2 decks. Instead, now they're going to up it to 2. So that way each player can have more options of cards to be able to use. So we have Guts here, which gives you 2 mental. So this is a really powerful card if your character's maybe low on mental. Says max 1 committed per skill test. If successful, draw a card. Stay back, I'll handle this. So all these cards do the same thing. They're going to give you 2 extra skill points for a test of a specific type. But then they also, if successful, they draw you a card. So in the end, they're kind of replacing themselves. And plus they have the special keywords, which is also very important because they're later cards in future sets that will look back on some of these certain keywords. So some might be a little bit more useful in other decks than others. So we have Guts, we have Perception, which gives you your books, your knowledge, which is a practice. At last, I found it. We have Overpowered, which gives you Fist, practice. Die, you beast. We have Manual Dexterity, which gives you the agility, or foot. Too easy. So those are the 4 main ones, and then the last one we're going to get is Unexpected Courage, which gets you 2 random, but doesn't let you draw a card. So this gets you, not 2 random, but 2 of anything. So this gets you a bonus to help you on any skill but you don't get to replace it. So there's kind of that thing you go back and forth. Is do you want to have the unexpected courages in your deck, or would you rather have a card that replaces itself? Replacing yourself is great because then you can draw a new card, possibly use that for another skill test or later on, or use that to play something else. Or do you want to be able to survive any type of skill? Because if you only play the one, maybe you're only going to play the thing that either boosts your character's weakness or gives them a bonus for something they already have. Like green and red really want stuff where they can succeed by extra motes. You might include stuff to help out with their skills they need to do that in. You're playing a lot of horror stuff. Maybe you like, oh, my character's having trouble doing horror actions. And then you're going to include the first card in there to give you extra horror. This would give you the option to be a lot more flexible on whatever you want to do, but it doesn't replace itself. Alright, then the last two cards, I actually think they dropped the countdown from Revised. So we get 2 copies in here. Each, I think they I think they left it at 2. I don't think they increased these ones at all. I don't know how to say they don't drop it. I don't think they increased it just because they're extra cards. Instead of giving 1 for every deck, I think they just put it to certain decks got 1. So like 2 decks got Bulletproof Vest and 2 decks got Elder Sign. They may have added 1 extra card. I don't remember exactly. But Bulletproof Vest, this is a level 3 card. So it's can be used by anybody, but it's going to cost. You're not going to have it right away. But it's more equipment. Item armor, bullets are one thing, 12-inch bangs are quite another. So it gives you 4 extra health. So if your character's dying a bunch or risking dying, this could be very useful for that. And on the opposite side, we have an amulet, which is Elder Sign Amulet, item relic. It has been in my family for generations. Take care of it, and it will take care of you. It gives you 4 extra brain. Now, you luckily actually put both of these on your characters. And they actually do give you extra fight and extra anything and brain and anything. But you can put extra and basically make your character an extra 8/8, which is essentially another full character almost. Because your highest stat on any character here is 9. So you have 9s and 8s, so like the highest is 9. So if you had both of these, you basically almost double your character. But again, it's not everyone's going to want to do this. It sounds like that's a great thing to do, but you're spending 6 experience doing this, like 6 points of extra cards you can't do, which might give you more niche abilities than worrying about dying. Extra horror might be great if you're doing something with like magic or mystic stuff where you have to worry about taking extra horror damage. The extra physical might be great if you're getting rushed into battle more. You have to worry about taking extra damage that way. But I don't know necessarily if you want to be like, these are staple cards. I always need 8 extra, 16 extra hit points basically, or 8 extra hit points total. So 4 and 4. Might not necessarily be included in every deck. Plus, it takes up your slots. So, like, even we saw right off the first card we saw was our, not one of our first cards. Our first card we saw, like, in our red deck was our coat. The leather coat, which only adds 2. But yeah, so you just want to include this, or you want to get rid of that for a bigger item. So, like, you could definitely toss that out for this, but now it costs money, but it gives you 2 more. But it also takes up more room in your slots. So, very interesting. Alright, the last set of cards we have to go through are our basic weaknesses. So, every deck building option says in there, required is there 2 special cards and 1 random basic weakness. This is what makes every Investigator game a little bit different, because you can be like, I'm going to do this, this, this. Here's your signature weakness. I have an idea of how I kind of want to deal with that based on my deck building. But you don't know what this random weakness is going to do. So it's going to definitely change up the game. And then as you buy more and more sets, if you're combining everything, you could definitely add all the weaknesses together and draw stuff from any set. Some people might play where they only play 1 expansion at a time and they only use 1 set of cards from each expansion, which you could definitely do that too. So, like, once I finish off this set, which is the Night of the Zealot, which is the core set, and I want to jump into the next expansion, which is the Dunwich Legacy or the one after that, Path of Carcosa, you could completely change up your entire deck. Use all the brand new Investigators, use all that, play with only cards from that set, then you only have to worry about them. But then after you've played through everything a bunch of times, you want to mix and match investigators. You might mix the card pools up. You might end up mixing up all your weaknesses. So yeah, we'll take a look at these. So we have 2 copies of Amnesia. So this might happen a little bit more often for people. It says Madness. Revelation. Choosing discard all but 1 card from your hand. Wait, where am I? What was I doing? So this sucks. It's going to hurt. But it's only going to hit you once. And then it's going to be done, at least for this game. Unless your deck gets reshuffled, of course. But it's not a constant effect. So the only downside is, since it's just a revelation, you can't dictate when you're going to get it. You could, I just spent this and drew like 4 extra cards, and then you draw this your next turn, or it's the 3rd card you draw after you drew 3 cards. Also, now you just lost all your cards. That could really suck. Same thing with this one. We have Paranoia. We get 2 copies of this. What was that noise? Revelation. Discard all your resources. So, yeah, if you're way down on resources, not a big deal. If you just played your 1 green card, we just played Hot Streak, and then your next turn, or your next action, you draw a card, and you get this, and it discards all 10 of that, that's a lot of waste, unfortunately. There's nothing you can really do about it. And then we have 1 copy of each of the other 3. So, basically, the idea is each player, when they first start off, you can take these 4 basic ones as starter deck, I believe. Just has, like, 2 players have 1, 2 have the other. But then they add some more if you want a little bit of distinction. We have Haunted, which is Curse, Revelation. Add Haunted to your threat area. You get -1 to each of your skills. Spend 2 actions to discard. So this one hurts you, but it basically have to spend a turn to get rid of it, unless you can deal with your minus skills for a turn. Hey, this turn, I'm just moving around the board. I can go ahead and not waste my extra skill points. Or I'm Daisy, and I have a bunch of knowledge. I can afford -1 in my book to still be able to search for clues, so I don't have to waste my other actions to get rid of this. Or same thing as someone, Agnes trying to do mental stuff, right? So sometimes you might be able to negate this for a little while because it's not actively hurting you. Then we have Psychosis, Madness. Revelation adds Psychosis to your threat area. Forced after you take 1 or more horror, take 1 direct damage. Spend 2 to discard Psychosis. So again, depending on what you're doing or what's happening, you might be able to ignore this for a little while, because as long as you're not taking horror for some reason, you don't have to worry about taking damage. The problem is you can't help it if you draw a card from the encounter deck that all of a sudden says, hey, do this and take 1 get horror damage. Ah, great, now you're forced to take 1 direct damage too. And since a lot of the characters, or a couple of the characters, are a little bit spongier one direction or the other, you might not be able to afford to take both too much. And then the last one we have is Hypochondria. Add Hypochondria to your threat area. Forced, after you take 1 or more damage, take 1 direct horror damage and you discard it. So the exact opposite. So that's pretty cool. We have basic ones, very simple core set ones, which 1 gets rid of your hand, 1 gets rid of your resources, 1 lets you, if you take damage, you take mental, 1 take mental, you take physical, and then the last one's just you get minus your skills, which is all very bad. Very, like any of these things are obviously weaknesses. They're going to be bad for you to have, but they're all fairly manageable. Like, they're not very destructive. There's some that are like weaknesses you could get that are an enemy that keeps coming after you, keeps attacking you every turn. Or there could be something that's like negates your Elder Sign ability, or shuts off your character ability, or things like that. Or makes you randomly discard a card every turn you have it out. Like, some of those could be even worse. So yeah, very interesting, very fun. That is what we have for the Arkham the Horror card game core set. So that's what for all the Investigator stuff. So come back for part 2, where we will look at the Encounter deck and see all the different locations and stories and all that stuff we're going to go through. Just as heads up for that will definitely be a spoiler if you don't want the story ruined for you, which is also, I think, why they started putting it in a separate box for some of these. So I'll see you guys there. Bye.